Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. Today, we have Natasha Swerdloff and Amy Johnson with us, and they're going to talk about everyday spirituality. And Natasha and Amy, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you guys.
All right. Thanks, Bonnie. Well, we'll just quickly introduce ourselves and jump in. We're really happy to be here. We both love this topic of everyday spirituality and just how practical and down to earth and everyday all of this is. So I've been around the principles for about 10 years now. Have been helping people by sharing this in my work, a lot of people with habits and anxiety. That's what I love to help people through, but really anything. So that's what I'm up to. I have an online school that helps people, again, in particular with habits and anxiety by pointing toward the principles.
Yeah, and I have been around the principles for about 8 years now, and come from a corporate background, and so I changed all my corporate work from being sort of very traditional to being informed by the three principles, and so it's changed completely, and I really love to see how people in business are really embracing this because it makes so much sense, and I think my whole the way that I speak about the practical applications of this in business has really helped me to appreciate how we can sort of put it down and make it easy for people to understand, because it so often can get confusing and people find that it's difficult to grasp hold on. And of course, because we're speaking about something that's formless, it's spiritual. So when Amy and I, we actually started this conversation about wanting to do something a year ago or more.
Yeah.
At least, yeah, or maybe a year and a half. And so it's taken different forms. We wanted to do we were going to do a seminar together in New York, and then that changed, and then it's taken lots of different forms. But when we did speak about a month ago and said like, well, what do we really want to talk about today? We both agreed on two things. One is that we wanted to make it just basic, like we can forget the simplicity of this and get lost in all kinds of philosophies. And the other thing was we wanted to make this practical and just remind each other and you guys of how and why it is that we are looking in this direction. Because it's not a philosophy, it's not just interesting to talk about, it's really helpful in everyday life. And so that's really where we wanted to begin.
Yeah, and I love that it feels really practical. Like we've seen it be so practical and so just obvious and common sense and in the weeds of life in so many ways. And of course, we've felt it not feel that way. And we've seen it with others when we're sharing, how it can sometimes feel esoteric or fluffy or too spiritual, and what is spiritual and all of that as well. So I think it's really important and going to be really fun to kind of look at what's going on when it just applies itself and we're just living from this versus when we're in a place where it doesn't feel practical at all.
So we're going to share some stories, both of us, and then we're going to open up to questions. So we promised Dennis that it's going to be good. So Dennis, I hope you're sitting tight in the chair.
Hope you have some good questions, Dennis.
Yeah, exactly. So it was interesting when earlier today I was seeing a client from South Africa, and it was the first time we spoke, and she started telling me about how this whole corona crisis has really impacted her and her family, and she's has all this anxiety around should they move, because not only are they hit financially and the whole country is, but there's also some racial issues going on that's really spiked. And so they were thinking about, should we move to another country? And there was a lot of things going on for her. And so she starts to unpack how all these different parts are fitting together in her head. And she said, so you can see there's a lot going on, and I have many different problems, and so she was really spreading it out. And I said, can I just suggest to you that I see really only one? And even doing that, and saying that from a place of knowing how the system works, I could see immediately in her whole body language that she calmed down. It was like, really? And I said, yeah, the way I see it. And so I started to speak to her about what it is that creates our experience. And then I pointed her towards who she really is. And now this is where it gets practical, because who we really are can seem like such a, again, I'm going to use the word fluffy. It's fluffy because we don't have a word for it. When we rest in this space inside, there's no words for it. It feels pretty nice. I said, when was the last time you had this sense of peace inside? And she really thought hard, and she said, in my honeymoon. And I said, well, I want to suggest to you that you probably rested in this space earlier today. And so I helped her go back and see that every time you just kind of, maybe you're just sitting on the couch, having a cup of coffee, and there's just this moment of resting. Or so South Africa is really beautiful, and she was living in this beautiful place. And I said, sometimes when you look out at the beauty, how does that feel? Just, oh, I went hiking with my family this weekend. It was beautiful. And I said, well, how does that feel when you're looking out on the, and seeing something beautiful? And she said, oh, that's wonderful. And so I started to help her see that who we really are is here all the time. And I helped her see how that who she really is and who we all are is just underneath this constant layer of jibber jabber that's in the head, and lots of things going on around the coronavirus, of course. But it was very interesting to see that she calmed down quite quickly as she realized, oh, it's here. And then I said to her, you know what? So why even look here? Why is this practical? Why do you think I'm pointing you here? And she started to see that when she was not caught up in her thinking, decisions were much easier to make. That she was actually confusing herself with, well, if we move here, then this is going to happen, this could happen. And so it's really practical to get people to calm down so that they, from that space, are able to see the practical use of this, how decisions are made easier when you're stress-free. And she used the word, oh, I'm much more resilient here. And I just loved how that came from her and not from me. So that was just one example from today where I was able to sort of in a 45-minute session really guide her from all of this crazy anxiety thinking to who she really is, to, well, why is this practical? How can this help you in your everyday life? So that was what just came up for me when just as we started this evening.
I love the simplicity in there's all of this stuff, no matter what, anytime, right? There's all of this stuff. There's stuff in our heads. There's stuff there's stuff coursing through our body. Stuff is my technical term for experience, thought, whatever we want to call it. There's all of this stuff always. There's stuff in the world. Our eyes look that way and our brain picks up the stuff. Our brain doesn't pick up the absence of stuff. That's just not how that machine works. It's a machine that looks for stuff and notes stuff to us, and not only notices it and picks it up and notes it like, oh, here's a thing. There's no thing, but here's a thing and there's a thing, but tells a story about it, because it's not just a label maker. It's a storyteller, our brain, right? So we see stuff. So in Natasha's client's example, it's so much stuff. And of course, when we're trying to nail down the stuff and then we're hearing the stories and it's all so meaningful and our brain is connecting dots and telling us where it's going to go from here and what it means about us and putting it all in past and future, you know, it's just kind of a mess. Even in good circumstances, you know, even when we like the stuff we're seeing, it's busy. There's so much there. But I just think it's so funny how when we just begin to be oriented beyond the stuff, you know, like, yes, there's a lot of stuff. And we have to acknowledge that sometimes and look at, yes, this is why it looks so busy and feels so crazy. But beyond that stuff, there's something there too. It's just that we're not used to looking there. We're definitely not used to falling into it and sensing and feeling into it. But just like you share, Natasha, in that example, I mean, just a little bit of pointing in that direction, it's almost like all that stuff is still there, but man, it kind of starts to fall to the background a bit, you know? And then this no stuff in this space, it just brings on this feeling of like familiarity and home, and we get to actually feel it as a thing so much more. Even as I say that, my mind is kind of saying, is that really practical? Like, is that really feel intuable? And it totally is. Yes, it still seems more vague than the concrete stuff. But I don't know, I think in my experience anyway, it's just a acknowledgement of like, yes, my mind's always going to want to tell stories and point to the stuff. But the more I look toward this no stuff and this space and this expansiveness beyond the story, that just starts to pop out of the woodwork and the scale shift. And then that starts to be home in a meaningful way for us more and more than the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just reflecting as you were speaking, Amy, as this woman who I spoke to realized that when she was resting in this space, her ability to be responsive to whatever will occur in her immediate future is much greater than if she's in this stressful space. And that's also one of the things I was sharing earlier, that I work in a corporate environment, and that's really practical for business people too. They have a lot of stuff going on. I'm using your technical term now. I hope it's okay. They have a lot of stuff going on, and big problems to solve, and a lot of money involved in all that. And just to ask them the question, well, where do you get your best ideas? They all say, in the shower, you know, going for a run, playing with my kids. You know, it's never, well, when I'm in a corporate setting and we're, you know, 10 people in the meeting room trying to discuss things, that never comes up as an option. So for them to see, wow, when I'm in this space of no thought, when I'm just, you know, in the shower or going for a walk or seeing beauty, I'm actually much more able to come up with something. And it's not even me doing it. Something arises from this wide open space. And it's also very easy for people to point out that when it does arise, there's a knowing, oh, this feels right. Well, of course, there's this sense of, well, of course, this is the right decision. Why didn't I think about that before? It's so obvious. This is what I should have been doing the whole time. And so it's quite interesting to see, you know, business people going, oh yeah, there is this kind of space, and I can use the word space with them, and something arises from there that I had not thought about. And it comes from not when I'm in the corporate busy setting, but actually when I'm relaxed. So that's really practical for them to know. And sorry, I just wanted to say the funny thing is sometimes they go, well, should I take a shower then whenever I want to have a creative idea? Kind of doesn't work that way, but
You say yes. As you're saying that, it's like I'm picturing like this big open field. And when something shows up in openness, we see it. Again, we're just attuned to see that, right? So when there's so much going on, it's been happening all along for them. Life is always living us all the time, no matter what. We're always being lived in that way. But yeah, we just are blind to it until there's a bit of quiet, and then it pops out of the woodwork and is so obvious.
Mm.
Something about like in terms of the practicality of this and how life lives us, I always get this feeling of like closer. Now, it used to look to me, and I see it look for people, like our mind thinks further out. And by further out, it might just be a minute from now, a year from now, 10 years from whatever. Our mind thinks on this linear timeline in a sense, and it's further out. It's never right here. But life is right here. So when I'm working with people, with someone recently um, who's caught up in a habit, it's like I see, it's kind of like you were describing about your client, there's so much going on, and it looks like to her like she's so far from home and she's lost, and how is it going to change? But I can see how her mind is going out, like her mind's wanting to know, how's this going to go tomorrow, and how is this going to end, you know? And I can see that in my own life too, like I would feel calm when I could see how there was something was going to, you know, come to some resolution, or what my future was going to look like, even if the future was later this week. It was never just this falling back into home and letting things unfold in real time and live us. So she's so much closer than she thinks she is. I mean, she's there, but for all this thinking, but her mind keeps pushing it out a little bit, saying, nope, there's a problem and you don't know how it's going to be resolved. And it's so funny in a way, because, you know, it's like behaviorally, how this habit behaviorally changes for you. I'm just going to say it this way, and this may not be exactly accurate, but it's like behaviorally, the habit falls away, because in real time right now, you just do what makes sense in real time right now. And then you keep doing that. But even as I say, and then you keep doing that, now we're going out, but it's like you do the best you can see to do right now. Done. And as we see more about these principles, the best we can see to do right now gets better. But that's it. And that's so hard for us to hear, because our mind will never say, oh, let me just do the best I can right now, and that'll be good. That's never good enough to a mind, you know. So just us seeing that is so telling. Like, it's only our mind that says it's not good enough, but that is the only way. I think it's just how we're lived in real time.
Yeah. I was speaking about time last week. I had a really busy week. I had so many things and deadlines, and so I found myself waking up in the middle of the night between Wednesday and Thursday, with making a list in my head. You know, Thursday you have to do, and it was like, there's no way. So I found myself feeling stressed at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then the stress kind of went, wait a minute, gosh. Isn't it good that it's not up to me? Isn't it great that I don't have to solve that? Because in my head, there was no way I could do all these things in one day. And I really needed to, because I was leaving Friday. And so there was this another practical way of reminding myself, wait a minute, I don't have to solve this. Something much greater than me will solve it for me. It's so interesting. I fell asleep again. I woke up the next morning, and I was going to go and make a cup of coffee. But before I had the coffee, I found myself sitting, bringing my computer into the kitchen, sitting at the kitchen counter. And I'd done like 6 or 7 emails before I even made coffee. It wasn't my plan. It wasn't my rational plan to do it that way. But that just happened. And I went, oh, that was nice. Oh, I got that done. I made coffee. And then I did the next thing and the next thing. But I didn't do anything. It was so interesting. Things got done all day, but there was this sense of movement. My body would go here, and then it would do that, and then it would call this person, and then it will write that email, or send that proposal along. And one of my neighbors came and sent me a text in the afternoon. Do you want to have iced coffee with me? And like, if he'd asked me the day before, do you want to have iced coffee tomorrow? I'm like, no way. I'm way too busy. I'm like, sure, let's have iced coffee. We had iced coffee, and I got so much done. And so it's just another example of there's something that moves us always. There's something that guides us. There's something that has an intelligence far beyond my little brain. And so it's really good to know that I don't have to solve it. Something will take care of me. Something in even the little practical things as writing emails. Like it's not like anything is too small for the intelligence behind the whole universe. Everything got done easily. It was just a really cool reminder for me to just experience my day in a really fun and easy way, and just getting much more done than I'd thought, and having time to relax with a neighbor.
And it's cool to know that even if you had had a horrible day, even if you had been in your head all day, life was still doing whatever was getting done. That's what I love too. Is like we can sometimes hear this as, oh, well, that's about me getting my head clear, and me, like, no, like, life's living us no matter what, even when it's a mess. There's so much happening.
Yeah. But I love how, I mean, just with what we've talked about now, like pointing out that, thought creates this amazing possibility of us to have any kind of thinking, and very often it'll get really crazy because there's all these options, and pointing that out to people is always really helpful to see that, oh gosh, I'm making myself crazy here with thinking, should I do this or shouldn't I do this, or let's make a spreadsheet and try and find out. And just to see how there's something behind that, there's a power behind that gives us the ability to have all these different experiences. And then also the pointing to the knowing of when something feels right, or when I'm home, and the knowing of when I make a decision and it feels like, oh yeah, it doesn't feel very, very often when I ask people, how did that feel when you made that decision? They'll go, oh, it just felt right. It's very easy. It felt calm. So there's that knowing, that's this space of pure consciousness. And then the last piece, the guiding of wisdom, that has always guided us. I was sharing with this woman this morning, this afternoon, from South Africa, that I said, this guide, this inner guide that you've always had, you wouldn't be here today if you didn't have that. There's no way we can think ourselves to having the lives that we have right now, right? There's something behind. It may look like you're actually behind the scenes, but you're not. Which reminds me that Amy and her family were in Copenhagen last summer. We had my husband and I had fun showing you around the Tivoli Gardens, which is like a mini Disneyland. And in the Tivoli Gardens, there is, I think I showed you, Amy, there's this little train where the little kids, when they're about 3 or 4, they're driving the train. And of course the tracks are there, but they think that they're steering the wheel. And so they're going, you see them turning, it's really cute. But then you see them when they're about 6 or 7, they kind of know, well, I'm not really steering anything. And they don't think it's funny to, did I show you that, Amy?
I don't remember.
They get the train
later, right? And just let it drive them.
Yeah. But the funny thing is that it's a really good metaphor, I think, for life. That we may think, gosh, I've got the wheel. This is me driving. I have to predict, and I have to control my environment because I've got this wheel. And they just don't know that the tracks are there. There's something else guiding the train. There's something else going on that we can trust, that we can rely on. And I think it's so practical and reassuring to know that I don't have to get my knuckles all white and get all stressed that I have to do this. I have to run the train. I can relax and know that something has me that is far beyond anything I could think.
And again, we miss that because the thing that's telling us that it's running the show is really loud, and it's in our voice, and it's telling us, like, you need to figure this out, so that piece of this is just so huge. Obviously, this whole conversation, in a bigger sense, that everything around the principles is I mean, I would say like it's opening us up to who we really are. What's there beyond all of this narration that's constantly happening. But seeing the narration for what it is, like we just literally have a machine in our heads that's job is to just tell us basically that it's got everything under control. So of course we listen to it. And of course, when we're up at 4 a.m. worrying, if we haven't seen that there's a bigger guide, right? Of course we're thinking, oh my gosh, and now I'm up at 4 a.m. and this must really be a problem. You know, we just get that bit backwards, the only way we can see it, unless we see it another way. So I just think it's so powerful to see, yes, a mind is just doing its job, but it's not living life. I have, I'm sure many of us are in this kind of situation, but here where I live, the kids are going back to school next week and they're not starting in a school. So lately, pretty much every night I'll go for a walk with one of my neighbors who has children that are going to school, and most of them work full time, and it's kind of a mess for them. You know, it's called a walk, but it's really free coaching, but it's okay. We go for a walk and they look and they think like, why aren't you freaking out about this? And I've just been so grateful for what I see in this, but I can see their heads. I can see the mind just doing the same thing my mind's doing. My mind's not doing it any differently. I just kind of know now not to listen to it so much, but their minds are trying to figure out every moving piece. It was so interesting. Like maybe 2 weeks ago, I went for a walk with one of my friends. So struggling. Her and her husband both work full time and they have 2 kids, and one of them has special needs, and their school is online. So they don't know what to do. And she's playing out as a mind would. She's not doing this. Her mind is playing out every scenario. And then if this, then that, and if that, then this. And my head's hurting just listening. And I'm just telling her, like, your mind's making all this up right now. I understand, because their mind's just grabbing for anything, any stuff it can hold on to. But it's just like, just come here. Like, we just have to let this unfold. And especially now when all that's happening, you know, our world's changing like so quickly in ways none of us are going to predict from our mind. Our minds aren't going to predict it for sure. And it's so interesting because that was like 2 weeks ago. About 4 days afterward, we talked and everything had changed. Everything had changed. Somebody came through. She has someone now coming to her home who's been tested. She feels great about the safety of this person, is going to sit with her children and help them with their online schooling while she and her husband work. Like it's fixed. But, you know, from that, there was no way. And that's what I was just telling her. It just reminds me so much of this. Like, it wasn't being irresponsible. It wasn't being in denial. It wasn't like, oh, let's not worry about it. It'll figure itself out. It's looking towards something that is reliable and that always is living us anyway. The only difference is we just don't know that we can look there and trust it as much.
And I think that's pretty much what you and I do, Amy. We point people to where their resilience is, and this whole field of possibility comes up. I could share exactly the same story with a client, another client I spoke to today, with 4 kids and the same kind of situation from New York, where things suddenly, like, her boss offered her to go down in time. A friend from out of town offered to come and help her with the kids. It's just like everything solved itself. But to point people to that space inside where possibilities arise from, and they may arise even though they're, in their busy heads, because life is living us, but to point out that there is this space. The practical part of that is that when we realize that something has been living us always, something has been guiding us always, despite the fact that we think we've had the wheel, when we start to see that, we can relax more and life really becomes easier. And so even though Amy and I both, of course, have the same situations that most of you have, that Corona somehow is influencing us, the knowing we have about how the system works really helps to see where I can look for for stability, where I can look for safety, where I can look towards what is always here. Because if I look out in the world, man, it's crazy out there, right? If it's not corona, then it's the environment, then it's the racial issues. I mean, Christ, I'm not even going to mention the president thing. But, you know, there's just so much going on that if I look out there, I'm going to make myself crazy with my thinking. So to me, really, sort of in conclusion, I think for me personally, knowing that I can just turn around, go inside, find that inside which is peaceful, that which I can rely on, that which is always there, has always been there, has always been guiding me. It really is so wonderful. And the kind of, I mean, I could tell stories for hours about how I've been guided through this corona period, because of course my work dried up very quickly, like many people did. But the ways where I've been having new ideas of how to solve the very practical challenges that I've had to get through my life, it really has come from this quiet space. And so that's the gift that I've had to see this, and the gift that I try and give other people, to point them towards that which they can rely on, that which is always there.
And just thinking back to what we said about how sometimes it can feel kind of esoteric or fluffy, or like we can't, you know, just to say again, I think we've said this, but as you just kind of sum that up, it's just so clear that it's only vague and fluffy and not practical when we think it is, when we haven't really looked there that much, I think, you know, really. I mean, it's almost that simple. It's almost as simple as like we experience what we expect, what we've seen, where we look, and the more we just look in that direction, this invisible space, all of these fluffy things, they just aren't that anymore. So I don't know. I hope that helps to encourage people, especially newer in this conversation, to, you know, again, we're never talking about like, oh, stick to it and keep looking and put your time in, but really keep looking, because it changes. It changes. It comes to life in a very, very real way.
Yeah, should we open it up?
Yeah, let's go to some questions.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Dennis, we have great expectations of you. Just kidding. No, please, anyone.
Dennis is the first.
Okay. I love what we've been talking about, because it's really been fun today being able to be in touch with that practicality. I was listening this morning to Michael Neal, A Whole New Way of Thinking About Racism, which is really amazing. He just posted it. And right at the end of that call, I got a call from someone else that lives in my building that said someone had climbed over a fence and had stripped my bicycle of its wheels, its seat, its everything. And when I was talking to her, there was like a 60-second moment there when I could see myself turning it into the tragedy of the day or the tragedy of the world or whatever. There's that opportunity. And, you know, it was just so great just to see that there's that possibility, and to walk away from it. And realizing very quickly not to draw any conclusions. I didn't even run down there and look at it. I talked to another friend and I went down there, and sort of like having the freedom to look and see what are the different options and possibilities, how it's going to get taken care of, what it's going to mean, and all that. Because I don't have a car, and they took the baskets off. Now, this is the funny thing about it. I have two bicycles down there. The one that got ripped off is one I haven't ridden in over a year. The one that I ride all the time is still rideable. They took some of the baskets, but it's just been, you know, all of that is just sort of like, and then here's another thing. I'm having lunch with a friend, And I start imagining the conversation, and I imagine myself talking to her and turning it into a tragedy, you know? And I say, is that really what you want to talk about when you have lunch with her today? And the answer was no. It probably won't even come up. If it does, it'll just be a mention here or there. But that thing that you're talking about, the everyday spirituality, that is such an example for myself of how that can occur, is just allowing, not going down the tragedy route, not buying into all of that kind of stuff. That practical applications have come up, things that I see to do, how I'm going to deal with it or whatever. But it's just such a sense of freedom and just being at peace, not to have to turn something into, ain't it awful?
I love that. That's amazing. And that, you know, that space, that 60-second space where you could see, that's you being in you, and then noticing your mind, like it's popped out a little bit. It's something that you see rather than something that you're completely collapsed with. And
Right.
not all the time, but more often than not, I bet. And that's amazing to see that. I love that.
That very practical aspect of this that makes life, I mean, I could say I've been having a fun day even, you know? Doing this call is fun, you know? Fun didn't stop because my bicycle got.
That's awesome.
Great story. Thanks, Dennis. That was really fresh.
And Kinneret? Okay, let's see. I think I'm having trouble.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it was double, showed up here and there. Hi, thank you. So I have a massage client, and I'm going to talk to him today. His last time when I was giving him a massage, he was saying that he needs to go to a doctor to manage anxiety medications. And I said, hey, can we have a chat about this? But what I do know is that, you know, I have thinking, yeah, but generally it's not super fast thinking. Okay, most of the time I think I'm in the normal range, but I also know people whose thinking seems to be so much faster than mine, and the rate in which they receive thoughts is really overwhelming. Like if I talk to them, you know, I can't really talk to them for too long. Like how fast they speak is hard for my brain to grasp. So I understand that they're dealing with so much volume, and that's so difficult, so challenging. And so I can only imagine the volume of anxiety thinking that's occurring. Do you have any suggestion from your experience in working with people whose thought volume is so big? It's not like mine, I know that.
Well, I would say like suggestions on how you can help them. Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of degree, but the same thing's going on for all of us. So yes, there's this faster and they may be more caught up in it, but it's exactly like someone who looks super peaceful all the time. So in that way, yes, anything we're pointing to here, I mean, like a super, you know, it's always interesting to kind of just enter into this dance of a conversation with someone and see what they see about it, you know? So just as a general thing, we probably never want to just go in teaching or, you know, lecturing. Obviously that's not going to go over that well, but like, you know, like, wow, you're talking really quickly, or like, I don't know how that might go, but something that's like, do you see how fast your mind's going? I would be just curious about that. Right. And then you get to kind of just be in that back and forth conversation with them about what they see about it and why. So like with my friend I was describing, she saw that her mind was moving really quickly, but she kept saying, well, yeah, but I have to figure this out. You know, well, yeah, but school starts in 2 weeks. I have to figure this out. So it was like, oh, you're in there with your mind going this quickly because you think you need to be in there figuring it out from that big tornado mess in your head. So, so it was like, oh, no. See, this is going to figure out. You don't have to do it from that mess. So that's just example there. But I think any kind of to where you can have a conversation and be curious about what they see about it, then you obviously have some grounding yourself, and you see some really helpful things that you could probably point out. What do you think?
Yeah, just to say that, like the client I was sharing about today, she started out, she was speaking really quickly because she was trying to explain to me all the things that were going on in her head at the same time. And as I told you, and I said to her, I think there's just one thing going on. And that immediately, it was kind of like her mind almost came to a stop. It was like there was something in me saying that, also because I know that there's only one thing going on, that she kind of went, huh. And then I started talking about what that was. And I could see that it was calming her down. And within just the first 5 minutes, she went from Speedy Gonzalez to pretty calm. And then it was much easier to point other things out. But I can also sense in you that that you have more of a peace, and I think that alone is going to help your massage client immensely.
Anyone else? You can either raise your digital hand by opening the participant window on the bottom of the screen. There's a little people icon, and then a white sidebar will pop up and there's a digital hand. Or you can unmute yourself.
I'm Debbie Sandy, and I'm a retired pastor and do some counseling, as people call and ask for prayer guidance, whatever, what I think about it type of thing. So it's not formal counseling, but it is, it is, but it isn't. I don't get paid for it. It's just, out of caring, I guess. So anyway, and so I went to an eye doctor. My husband's very compromised. He has a number of issues that could put his life at risk. So I can't really go anywhere or go to the grocery store or anything. So everything's delivered. But anyway, I was not seeing well at all. In fact, when I would come on these Zooms, I would have trouble with the light. And now I'm not having trouble. And the wonder of it was that I went there, I was masked, he was masked. He's brand new to me, so I didn't even know, except I had looked things up on him. And he seemed like he had really good credentials and experience. So I felt pretty calm about that. And I just found that out just before I left the house. I just looked at his bio. So anyway, because I was thinking, how your mind goes, come, and all my friends were saying, oh, you could have this, and you could have that, and you could have this. Well, when I got there and they checked me, he said, no, you're fine. You don't have any of those. And I do have some severe eye problems and prisms and all kinds of stuff. And so he said, but you do have a secondary cataract. And he said, now, if you want to think about this, you can wait. And I can do this surgery later, or I can do it today. And it takes about 15 minutes. And now normally I would have thought, oh, I can't make a quick judgment like that. I have to go home and think about it and, talk to my husband and all these things. And I thought, all of a sudden it just came over me. You trust this guy. He knows what he's doing. I mean, he did the exam and all the stuff he had to do. And, I had a retinologist report there with pictures. I had the other report for cornea, because I have a couple things happening there. And so he had seen all that. It was all on the screen on the sidewall. And he said, well, I'll let you think about it while I dilate your eyes just to check that retina back there and everything. And when I come back, you can tell me if you've decided. So I just got this peace, like you say. It was just like, I thought, look, you're here, everything's clean, your hands, everything is clean. Yeah. And I thought, there's no reason to have to go through this whole process again to get in here. And, so I might as well just do it right now. And I did it, and it was wonderful, and I could see again. So it was just really such a blessing, and so that's my story. And I just felt that wisdom and peace that Sydney talks about, and I just had that phew, and it was just like I was safe, I was home, and I was able to, be a good patient, sit still, open my eye, do all the things I needed to do, so yeah.
That's a wonderful story, Betty. It's so interesting how the way you explain it, there's this knowing that felt peaceful and right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start rationalizing, well, I've looked at his credentials and it's very clean here. And that's what the mind does. We actually know with our knowing, and then we rationalize and we make up all these reasons why we knew, but actually we just know when it's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's beautiful. And I've tried in some ways that I can to use this in preaching, through principles. I tried in conflict management, so I'm doing my best. I don't know how well I'm doing, but I'm doing my best with it. And it really, I hope it makes a difference, and people can, but I think the most important thing is just to live it and let it come through. And I can see that in all of you, that's a real blessing to the other person. So
yes.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Betty. That was a great story.
I'll mute myself, I guess. Yeah.
Christina, let's see, where'd you go? I'm
unmuting. And sorry, trying to get the video also. Hi.
Oh, so good to see you, Christina.
Hi, Natasha. How are you?
Good.
And Amy, I just wanted to chime in and say how much I appreciate the topic and the simplicity of how practical it is to remember, even to think back on your day. Oh, yes, I did have peaceful moments. And that is practical. I think so many of us think that we need to sit down and do a meditation with some big capital M and find that peace with a capital P, and all those moments of peace and stillness and flow and wisdom that happen through our day, we sort of discount. And to me, that's incredibly practical to remember that that's threaded throughout our day. It's so practical to me in terms of interacting with my moments of anxiety or stress, that, knowing that that's what the mind does makes all the difference in how I can relate to those moments. So I really love the topic in pointing out that this is day-to-day practicality makes a difference in your moment by moment experience and how you interact with things. And how practical is it that life is to know that life is going to take care of itself, and I don't have to spend all that energy figuring out how to do it. So I just really appreciate the topic and pointing out this simple truth that it's practical. It's practical information. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking this on as a topic to kind of shine the light in that direction. I really appreciate both of you for that.
Thanks, Christina.
Yeah. I don't have a story to share. It makes a huge difference in my life and the people that I work with as well. So thank you for that awareness. Thanks.
Thank you. I love just, seeing that it's always happening. We just don't always have the eyes to see it. And then
right.
We get pointed toward it and we have the eyes to see it. And you're like, oh, this is always happening. It's like anything else practical. We start to kind of take it for granted, which is not a bad thing. It means, you know, we just see it so much that we don't have to, it's not special anymore. I mean, it's special, but you know what I mean? It's not unusual, or it's just like, oh yeah, this has always been there. It's always been working this way. I just was looking over here, so I just didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you both so much.
I jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually got on this call tonight thinking, what a treat with you guys here. So I'm really grateful. And I never thought about the 3 principles in this slide being very practical in that way. And then as I'm listening here, maybe I got a display today because at work we had a kind of an emergency situation, kind of, so everybody had to ditch their plans for the day, and everybody was chipping in, you know, what can we do to solve this problem? And there was some online meetings going on, and you know, people start discussing, no, we should do it this way and other ways, you know, and disagreeing. And I've just found myself just starting to take action and supporting some colleagues who did the same. And eventually everything turned out just super fine. And we accomplished what we needed to do. And it looked quite chaotic during the process. And when I'm now listening to you, it's like, oh, maybe there was even this guiding inside. I didn't see it while it was happening. What I'm seeing much more is, well, there's something, especially right now, being in this webinar, you know, everything is relaxed, and I just have this bubbling joy and gratitude from inside, and I have that so much now. But thanks for this new perspective on the 3 principles, that it's really practical in this way. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Nice to see you again.
How cool that you could see your day in a, you know, in retrospect, like you can see now, oh, this is what was happening the whole way. I love that. And that's what I think brings it to life for us. You know, we have days like you had, and then you have the eyes to see, oh yeah, there was something guiding us. And it just kind of comes to life from experiences like that. Very cool.
Thank you.
I think maybe we have time for one more, if anyone. Bob and Marty.
Hi. I just love how this journey that we're on to know more and about what's going on with us and with the world, and it's like it's helped me. I used to think that coping was the way. I was a quiet, stoic person, and I thought, oh, I'm doing pretty good with, you know, not able to not react, not be reactive. But it made me realize, as much as my family was all very volatile around me, and I thought that I was in control, but what I was doing was stuffing. So I was reactive internally, and they were reactive externally. And when I discovered Sid, it just opened me up to the well-being that was always there and was underneath all the stuffing. But I couldn't get to it because there was so much stuff. And then I thought, oh, do I have to go through years of analysis and get all that out of my subconscious, everything I've stuffed in there? And you realize all you have to do is just let go, become as a child again, open, curious, quit trying to explain everything away and just let it be what it is and be curious and open enough to deal with it as it shows up. It's been so liberating. I just am so grateful for the Three Principles community, Amy, the wonderful work she does, and all of them, and especially Sid.
Oh, so good to see you guys. I love that, Marty. That's such a, it is, we think we're doing good because it looks different from the outside, but I love that something deeper was like, no, wait, there's more. Like, it could be even better, I don't have to cope in this way. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really loved the simplicity that you were pointing to. This was really a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much. Would either of you like to say anything to wrap it up?
Well, I just want to come back to when you recognize that this is going on all the time. You don't have to sit on a meditation cushion with your hands in a certain way. You don't have to be even in a quiet room. You can be in the middle of a busy supermarket or at work. These moments happen all the time. We rest in this knowing all through the day. It really is always here. And it's such a beautiful journey to start seeing that what we have been looking for, some of us all our lives, is already here. And we don't need to do something specific to find it. It's just to look where it really is. It's not out there. It's here, and it's ordinary, and it's just every day.
I love it. That it is that simple. And it's, just, we've been so pointed toward a different direction. But I mean, just even in the stories that you all shared, I mean, just starting to open up to like, oh, wait, it looks like this and it feels like this and it's less visible and all of that. It flips it. The scales start to shift and it becomes so practical and you feel it guiding you. It's not just an idea. So it's amazing that it works that way.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much for both coming on. And I just want to let everybody know the next webinar is on September 9th, and it's with Lynn McWright and Teresa Walden. So hopefully we'll see you live then. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.